Today you're here with Janelle Berker for Your Story, His Glory, and we get to talk with Teana Weems. Yes, you recognize the last name. It is Pastor Weems' wife, Teana, and we are thrilled to hear from her today. Teana, I'm going to give a brief introduction for you, okay? And then we'll get started.
Sure.
So Teana Weems was born in Harriman, Tennessee in 1958.
57.
Oh, 57. Thank you. She had two brothers, one that went to heaven when he was age 9.
Yes.
And the other still lives here in Johnson City.
Correct.
She was raised in the U.S. Air Force and attended 13 different schools in 12 years.
Right.
I attended two schools, actually.
Wow.
In all 12 years.
Oh, wow. So you have lifelong friends.
Yes,
Right.
and different perspectives about
Sure.
how big the world is and how small it was for me.
Yes.
It's
yes.
great.
It's still a small world.
It is. She married Reggie Weems in 1976.
75.
75 at the age of 18 and
Yes.
moved to California.
Yes. 2 months out of high school. Yes.
She raised 3 children and has 11 grandchildren. Teana has a bachelor's of nursing and a master's of theology studies and attended ETSU, King University, and Liberty University. She spent much of her career in the cardiac cath lab and home hospice.
Correct.
She enjoys teaching, cooking, traveling, and of course, spending time with her grandchildren.
Of course.
She enjoys foreign missions work and has been to 6 countries, and many of those countries multiple times, including the Ukraine 4 times since the war started.
Right.
And you plan to return to Romania this summer to work in a camp that ministers to children with cancer.
Yes. Yes.
Sounds very exciting.
It is exciting.
And difficult.
It is very exciting. And it ministers to me. It's a blessing to me. And I love that. I love that aspect of it, Janelle.
That's awesome. I love that the Lord gave you skills that, like nursing, to be able to go and both minister to people spiritually and physically.
It opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah.
To be able just to go in and do something.
That's great.
You know, sure.
That's
Sure.
great.
I love it.
So let's get started by hearing your story for His glory in finding out exactly how you met Jesus and when you became a Christian and how He's affected your life.
Okay. Well, I was raised in the Air Force and had lived for 2.5 years when from the time I was 10 till about 13 in Athens, Greece. That's where I met my husband. And our family had moved to San Angelo, Texas. It was just me and my younger brother, Craig, who is 5 years younger than me, my mom and my dad. And I was at one of those places in life where I had left all my friends. We had just moved to a new area. I didn't know many people. I had started a new school. We lived in San Angelo, as I said, in West Texas, and the environment was different. Everything was different. And Janelle, I don't think I had really ever heard the gospel. I was not raised in a Christian home. I wasn't raised around. I wasn't raised around any Christians. There were no Christians that I knew, unless it would be the family of somebody. I knew a chaplain's daughter when we lived in Greece, and I had been invited to Bible school 1 week when we lived in Colorado, and I did get to go to Bible school. But I don't ever remember hearing, and maybe God just had not opened my eyes or my ears or my heart to the gospel. I never remembered hearing the gospel. And so we were at home one afternoon. My mother was 37 years old, and she was pregnant with her 3rd child. So my youngest brother had yet to be born. And we lived in San Angelo, and Mother and Daddy were fixing dinner. They were in the kitchen working. Craig was playing. And I heard on TV Billy Graham preaching the gospel. So I went in and I sat down on the floor right in front of the TV. Just I couldn't stop listening to it. And he very clearly presented the plan of salvation. I heard every word of it, and you have to understand the context. I was not in a religious environment at all, nothing. But I heard this clear presentation of the gospel, and I was so moved. And I don't know if you all remember, but at the very end, after Billy Graham would share the gospel, he would back up and begin to pray, and the choir would sing "Just as I Am." And then he would look into the camera and he would say, "You may be at home in your living room. You may be in a bar. Wherever you are right now, you can ask Jesus to come into your heart and save you." And I was at this point crying. I knew I needed a savior. I knew I was so convicted. I got up, I went into the bathroom, and I locked the door. I got on my knees. My husband says I knelt before the throne, but that's but I knelt down and I asked Jesus to take my sin and to save me. I had no concept of what that meant. I just knew that I had been given the faith to believe him, and I believed him, and I cried out to him, and I know he heard me. Um, I got up out of the floor, unlocked the bathroom, and came out. Nothing had changed in my living room, in the kitchen. My parents were still working on dinner. My brother was still playing, but something had happened in me. And a few minutes later, just maybe 30 minutes later, a girl that lived down the street from me knocked on the door, and she said, "Tina, do you think it was light, late in the day? It was getting summer." And she said, "Do you think you could go for a walk with me just around the block?" And my mom said I could go, and I went out with her, and she had come to invite me to church with her. And so that happened through the week. It was in the month of June. I don't remember the day, but I do know the following Sunday, I got to go to church with my friend. And that day, I made a public profession of faith. And about 2 weeks later, I was baptized in this little church. I'd never gone to church before, in this little Baptist church in San Angelo, and that's where I began to grow.
That God got your attention,
Yes.
changed your heart, gave you new life,
Yes.
and had sent this girl to your house
Don't even remember her
30
name.
minutes
Yes, exactly.
30 minutes later,
Right.
so that he could begin a relationship with you.
Yes. Yes.
I love how intentional he is
Yes.
about loving us,
About loving us.
and wanting to be in a relationship with us.
Yes.
Like, he reminds us of that over and over and over, and we miss it. And then
Right.
it's shocking when it happens.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
I appreciate you talking about the Billy Graham aspect, because, I think there's a lot of skepticism when it comes to televangelists, and even people who did come to the Lord in that way also have skepticism about what actually happened in their living room. And you're here to say to people, the Lord can speak to your heart.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely. I still can hear "Just as I Am," and I tear up because it was real to me. The Holy Spirit drew me, opened my eyes, and opened my heart to him that day. And I still can see Billy Graham's face, right? I mean, it was as though he was only speaking to me. And and I didn't understand everything about the gospel. I didn't understand justification, sanctification, any of I didn't even know those words. All I knew that Jesus was calling me, and I heard him calling, and I just responded in faith, and he saved me. And my life has never been the same. I've not always lived a good, perfect life, but something in me that was dead came alive, and I've never been the same. Never.
It's incredible. It's also incredible that it's not something you knew anything about.
No.
So you didn't have any preconceived notions about what was happening, or that maybe it wasn't happening the right way.
Right.
That it was just simple faith
Right.
in knowing Him and coming to faith in Him.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So you were 13.
Yes.
And you began.
It was like a week or so before I turned 14. So it was right there. I was right on the cusp of turning 14.
So what was that conversation with your parents when they were not believers?
It was difficult because they were skeptical. My dad had made a profession of faith when he was young. He had actually he went for a semester to Carson Newman, so he knew the gospel story. He had made a profession of faith, but he had walked away from the Lord. He and in fact later said he became a Christian when he was in his 40s after I was married. My mother was raised around the gospel. It's just that we didn't have a Christian home, and that was never shared with us. So we knew nothing we didn't go to church. We knew nothing about the gospel. In fact, I remember when I lived, we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up. My dad was enlisted. He was not an officer. So we lived poorly, just like a lot of people in the military do. Sorry. And I remember a lady down the street from us had come to my mother and asked my mother if I could come to Sunday school with her children. And she said, my mother told me no because I didn't have shoes to wear. And I did have shoes. I had a pair of tennis shoes, but they had holes in them. And at that point, they couldn't buy me any new shoes. And she didn't want me to go to school or go to church with holes in my shoes. So, I knew I was clueless when it came to anything having to do with God. I had learned the Lord's Prayer. My dad taught that to me. And I knew, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord. Sometimes I would say that, but I didn't know. I had no concept of what I was doing because nobody prayed in our house. So when I went to my parents and told them that I was saved, my dad said, "So you got religion?" And I said, "I don't think so. I think I just prayed and asked Jesus to save me." And I asked my dad why it was that Jesus had to die on the cross. I didn't understand that. And he really couldn't tell me. He didn't really know. But when I got baptized a couple of weeks later, that Sunday night, they did come and they saw me baptized in church. And I was thankful for that. But that was the only time that they ever came to church with me until they believed and trusted Christ some years later.
So I'm glad they supported you, even though they were not living that also.
Right.
So
yes,
they were good parents.
Yes, they did support me. And they would take me to church or let me ride with someone. And so I got to be involved in youth groups and go to a camp. And even we moved a year later to San Antonio. And even there, I didn't get to go on Sunday mornings, but I got to go on Sunday nights because the youth pastor and his wife would pick me up at my house and take me. So I got to be involved in church in a Sunday night youth group until I was able to drive and take myself. So.
Oh, that's great. Will you briefly tell us about your brother that passed away? Since that was mentioned earlier.
Sure. Jimmy was born in San Angelo. I was saved in June. Jimmy was born in November. My mother was pregnant, and I also had a brother I mentioned 5 years younger than me, Craig. So Craig was 10, and I was 14 when Jimmy was born. And he was born there in San Angelo. About 2 months before he was born, the mailman, the man that delivered mail to our house, had given my mother a little book written by Dale Evans Rogers. And I think it's Dale Evans, who was married to Roy Rogers, Dale Evans Rogers. And the name of the book was Angel Unaware. And the mailman, he just shared this book with my mom and said, I found this little book you might be interested in reading. Well, it was the story of her having a son, I think it may be a daughter with Down syndrome. I didn't even know what Down syndrome was. Back then, they called children with Down syndrome mongoloids.
Oh.
It was a very derogatory term. And in the book, she mentioned that, and she said that the proper term was Down syndrome. So we knew nothing. My parents knew nothing. I knew nothing about that, but I read the book, and it was written from a Christian perspective. And I think that was the point in the mailman giving this to my mother. It was written from this Christian perspective, and he thought maybe she would be interested in reading it. Well, what that mailman didn't know and what the Lord was doing was preparing our hearts, because my brother was born with Down syndrome. And he was born in November, and it wasn't until the 1st of January that the doctors in St. Angelo realized, this was in 1971, that it wasn't until January that they realized something was wrong with Jimmy. So, and they picked it up by a heart murmur he had. So they sent my mom and my dad with my brother Jimmy down to San Antonio to a larger hospital for a more thorough evaluation. And my brother and I stayed with some neighbors there that lived across the street. And our parents were gone for a few days. I remember they came back home. My mother was crying. She was hysterical. Came across the street and said, my baby is going to die. And our family really, the dynamics in our family changed at that point. My dad got a humanitarian assignment to San Antonio because they had a hospital there that could take care of my brother. He had a congenital heart defect, and the doctors gave him 6 weeks to 4 months to live. And so we moved to San Antonio. Everybody was from that point on, everything in our family became sad. It was just sad all the time. My parents were sad. My brother and I pretty much began taking care of ourselves, which we had done that for a good part of our lives anyway. We had an unusual situation growing up, but Jimmy became the center of, we loved him, but he became the center of the focus of our family. And we lived in San Antonio until my dad retired in 1975. And at that point, we moved, my parents retired and moved back to Bluntville, where family was, Bluntville, Tennessee, so they could be surrounded by family. And Jimmy lived to be 9 years old. And during that period of time, my parents did come to Christ. They came to know the Lord. My brother got saved. All of my family came to know Christ through Jimmy's influence. And he wanted to ride the Tweetsie Railroad. And so all our family took him. When I say all our family, at that point I had married, had 2 babies, 2 little girls. One was 6 months old, was 8 months old. One was 2. And my mom and dad, one of my grandmothers, I had a niece and another little girl. We all went up to Tweetsie. My dad was off that month. All of us, except for Craig, my brother, went up there, and we got on the train. And they have a little train robbery. They do a little show. They have a train robbery on the train, and like you're being robbed. Jimmy thought it was real. He went into cardiac arrest and died on the train. So that was a very devastating time for us. And then we had to come back, find my brother, and tell him that Jimmy had died. So devastating time, yes. So very difficult, but my parents at that point were involved in a church. The church did come around them and supported them, supported my brother and us. And God was good to surround us with the family of God.
That is incredibly sad. But the good is that he
He used it
touched so
all
many.
for his good. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And your family come to know him. And so Jimmy had a huge influence in your family.
Huge influence in our family. Yes. The Lord really used that sickness to draw my family to himself.
Amen.
Yes. Yes.
It's so hard as we live our lives. And we've been talking a lot about that in our community group at church, how it's hard to live through the difficult and look at God at the same time. Absolutely. And see him.
Yes.
And just last week, we were talking about how that Job, at the end of his trial, and God begins speaking to him, his response was, I see you. Yes. And so how hard it is to walk through trials that are so devastating, yet to get to the end of those and say, I see you, God.
Yes. Yes.
So it's incredible that even through those difficult moments, your family saw God, yes. Saw him at work, saw the family of God hug, yes. Surrounding them in a positive way.
And my family felt seen by God, and and that's what the church does for us. The church lets us know God sees you. We see you. I haven't even told any of the story of Reggie and me, but Reggie had just become the pastor of a small church in Johnson City. So we were surrounded by that church, plus the church we had come from where my parents were. And we knew that God saw us, and we were surrounded by the church. And I don't know that any of us would have been able to pick up and go on. But I did see God work in a miraculous way in my parents' lives, that they were able to move forward. Craig was 18. He was grown. Craig was absolutely so fragile at that point. And God just held him together. And it was difficult, but God really, he saw us and we saw him, and we were able to plod through and continue to grow.
God has been prompting my heart to recognize that when we see him, we're seeing his character, and we're getting that understanding that we can trust him. Yes. We see his attributes and his faithfulness and his compassion and his love for us. Yes. That, we're not just going, oh, there is a God. Yeah. We're saying, oh, there's a loving God. There is a compassionate God. There's a God that, yes, he created the universe, but he holds my heart.
Yes, he does. Yes.
And so, that personal reaction and understanding of him, yes. And draws us deeper. And sometimes we recognize that it was so worth it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And, even Jimmy's life, he lived 9 years, and he was sick for 9 years, but he just had so much love to give. I don't know if you've ever been around a child with Down syndrome. He had so much love to give to us, and we all, my parents, needed that love so much. And it's just love that is, it's an abandonment kind of, he'd throw his arms around us. I love you so much, and kiss us right in the face. And, I just love you so much. And all the time wanted to sing and just play. And when he died, it was a huge part of our hearts were just died with Jimmy, but God was able to fill that void. He did fill it for us. And watching my mother and my dad walk through that, I didn't know how that was going to influence me and help me in years to come when my own son died. Such a blessing.
That's that was the direction I was thinking that we would go. And let's talk about you getting married first,
Yes,
because I know
back
all
home.
of the listeners want to hear about this love affair with Reggie Weems and how this actually came together. But yes, I do want to connect those
Sure.
two experiences and how that God had prepared your heart for that.
Absolutely.
So you were 18 and had graduated high
Yes.
school.
I met Reggie when I was 10 years old, when we first moved to Greece. He also had first moved there, and he was playing Little League baseball. And I just saw him, and I thought, I like him. And I've told people I was I when I was 12 years old, I was 5'9". I've never grown an inch since then, but I was taller than every other boy. And I really liked Reggie because he was taller than me. And I remember thinking, there's a boy that's taller than me. But I remember I knew him from the time I was 10. And by the time I was 12, I knew I was going to marry that boy. I loved him. And our parents got to know each other. We grew up in very similar circumstances. Both our dads were military. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Reggie's mom worked, and they also had a country band. Reggie's parents did, and they sang. They had a band. His mom was the lead singer, and his dad organized the band. So they played guitar and they sang all over Europe. They would go on these cruises, and at the NCO club and the officers club, it was Jenny Lou and the Country Swingsters.
I love that. I didn't know this.
Yes. And so, he would always say, my parents are famous.
That's great.
Yes.
So do you have recordings of this in your home?
We've got some
Okay.
recordings of them. His
That's
mom
awesome.
was great. They both were great singers. And their story alone is awesome. But we met when we were kids, and I used to listen to his dad's radio program on Saturdays, and I really knew his dad before I knew him very well. But I loved Reggie. He's the only boy I ever loved. And when we left Greece when I was 13, my heart was just broken because I thought, that's the boy I love. I want to marry him. How can I leave him over there and move to Texas, But I didn't know that when we moved to San Antonio, my family would live 2 blocks from his because his dad had retired. His sister had moved to San Antonio, and they had a grandchild. And his mom and dad wanted to move right next door to that grandbaby, which was 2 blocks from where I lived. So Reggie and I ended up going to the same high school. He was a year ahead of me. I lived inside the 2-mile mark from school. He lived 1 block outside the 2-mile mark. So he could ride the bus and I couldn't.
Okay.
But he walked me to school every day
Oh.
and walked me home every day. And then when he graduated in 1974, he said, as soon as you graduate, we'll get married. We had no plans. We had nothing. So he went into the Air Force so that we could get married. He went in December of 74. I graduated in 75. My family moved to Blumpville, and I actually completed everything not online. It was by mail, but I finished my courses. And I was handed my diploma at the school a year later, but I graduated in June. We got married on August 5th. He flew to Tennessee and got me, and we moved to California. I'd never been away from home in my life.
Wow.
We moved to California, and I cried for months because I was homesick. I missed my mom and my dad and my brothers. I especially missed Jimmy, but I married the love of my life, and Reggie he was actually in language school. He has he has the ability to learn languages, and they test you for all that when you go in the military. So they trained him for a year and a half in Arabic, Egyptian Arabic. And so he learned Arabic. He became fluent in Arabic and became a translator, and which was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought, now the Lord. Reggie had gotten saved when he was 17. So we got involved in a little church, and I thought, now the Lord is going to send us to Egypt as missionaries. And Lord, I don't want to go to Egypt. It was that kind of thing. Lord, please, I don't want to go to Egypt. But we were married and ended up. He went to NSA the last year, and we moved to up to Laurel, Maryland.
What is NSA?
At National Security Agency, where he was doing, interpreting, translating for the Air Force. I thought, what are we going to do with our lives? I just didn't know what we would do with our lives. My family lived in Bluntville. His family was still in San Antonio. We were up there at NSA, and I got pregnant with our first child. And so I had Stephanie. She was born at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., and we had no clue what we were going to do. But Reggie and I had been attending a small church up in the Washington, D.C., Laurel, Maryland area. And there was an evangelist that came from Bristol who, it's amazing, who was holding revival. And he preached out of Isaiah, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And Reggie came home that night and he said, I believe God is calling me to ministry. I don't know what to do with this. I believe God. And I thought, Reggie had made a book, done some book reports in high school, but he had never done any public speaking. And I kept questioning that. Are you sure about that? And he said he was sure. So long story, we had the baby. He got out of the service. We moved back to Bluntville, and he enrolled in, it was Graham Bible School, which was in Bristol, and just started school there, and went to work as a secretary in a church in Bluntville where my parents went. And so he later on became the youth pastor, but he was the secretary. He was the pastor's secretary at the church. That was his first job, and he was going to school. We did everything backwards. So he went on to school. We went on to have our second child, Angela, while we were still in this big transition in our lives. And he had maybe 2 years of Bible college under his belt, and he assumed the pastorate of a church in Johnson City, East Park Baptist Church. And we were as poor as church mice, and he only had 2 years of Bible college and 4 years of military service, and 2 years experience working in a church, and he took this church. So he was, 24 maybe, and pastoring a church in Johnson City. So we have spent the rest of our time going to school. Reggie's he's 68 years old, and he's still enrolled in some classes and doing some work on another degree. But we have done everything backwards.
I laugh about another degree because he has how many doctorates in theology?
He has 3 earned doctorate. One whatever it's called when they give you one honorary doctorate. And he has 3 master's degrees. He's working on his 4th. And he loves it. He just loves that.
You have to at that point. Sure.
Yes. Yes, he loves that. After we had the children, we went on, after we had the 2 girls, we had moved to Johnson City. Jimmy had died, and I wanted another baby. And so I began to pray and ask the Lord to give us a son. And I prayed, and Reggie prayed with me. We were asking God to give us a son. And I got pregnant, which was such a miracle. And we were just so excited. And at about 16 weeks, I lost the baby, and was pretty devastated, as you might imagine. And after that, I began to pray, Lord, please give us a son. I would pray the prayer of Hannah, and I cleared a place in our house where I was going to put the crib, and I had a little bassinet that I put there. And I would go there every morning and open up my Bible and pray and ask God to give us a son. And so I got pregnant again, and the baby was actually growing in the ovary, not the fallopian tube. And just never, the baby never moved. And so they had to remove the ovary and the fallopian tube, and lost that baby, lost that ovary and that tube. And my chances at that point were cut in half for having a baby. And Reggie told me, he said, "We can't do this anymore." And I said, "Please, let's just try one more time. This has been 2 years in a row." So in 1985, I got pregnant again, and it was with a lot of fear and trepidation because I just wanted this baby so much. 1984, I'm sorry. I got pregnant again, and we were at about 12 weeks, and we lost the baby. And at that point, we just Reggie said, "No more, no more."
He couldn't see her.
He just it was heartbreaking. It was just heartbreaking, and my parents were devastated. And it wasn't as though I was carrying the baby for 6 weeks and didn't know I was pregnant. We picked out names. I felt the baby move, and it was heartbreaking. So when I got pregnant with Jonathan, we just faced that with every day. Lord, is a gift from you. Every day is a gift from you. And on August 5th, 1986, on August 5th, I had an 11-pound baby. It was our 11th anniversary. I was 11 days overdue. It was just amazing.
Wow.
We had Jonathan David, and he was the golden child. For this child we prayed, and we had John, and felt like our little family was complete. And we had the two girls who were, I guess they were about 8.5 and 6.5 years older than John. So there was a big age gap, but we had the baby and loved that child so much. And John was born, Reggie says, smoking a cigar, saying, "I'm in charge," Our girls were very compliant. They were, I could go sing in the choir and sit them on the front pew of the church and say, "Now you sit here till I come down and don't move." And they would sit there and just be good, never do. And I thought I was the perfect mother. I didn't know. I just had two perfect little girls. So, because we had Jonathan, and he was a handful. He was all boy, and 11 pounds of energy, and it was a lot of fun. We felt very fulfilled. Look what God has done. He's given us this child. That's a good thing.
I remember talking to your girls when they were in high school and saying, do you fight with your brother? Does he get on your nerves? And they're like, "Oh no, he's hilarious." Yes. He is the funniest person. And I'm thinking, that's crazy.
Yes.
I spent my life being annoyed with my brother and vice versa.
Oh, yes.
So I thought that was
Craig
really
and I were
cool.
like that. Yes, yes, yes. They loved Jonathan, and Jonathan loved them, and he did annoy them, but he would tease them, and they teased him, and the age gap was just enough for it to be a fun thing. The girls were very close, and then they had Jonathan, so it was like a little toy. Yeah, they dress him up and play with him.
Oh, sure.
Yes,
It's so fun.
it was fun. It was fun. When Jonathan was 4 years old, I after he was born, I started nursing school, and I was going to school, taking care of him. I didn't want to put him in a daycare. I had worked in a daycare for a little while, and I didn't want to put him in. I wanted us to be able to be with him. So we worked our schedule out, so I was able to go to school and be home with Jonathan, and it was a good thing. And when he was 4 years old, we came to Heritage Baptist in 1991, and he grew up at Heritage. He was 4 years old, cut his teeth, so to say, on the pews of the church, and grew up here. And this has been home since 1991. Yeah, yeah.
And so you all were, how old was the girls whenever you all started?
Well, Angela, their kids still think they're 10 years younger than they are. The girls, they don't tell them how old they really are.
Oh.
So Stephanie was born in 1978. Angela was born in 1980. Their birthdays are December 21st and December 23rd. So they're 2 years and 2 days apart. But I think that makes Angela 44 and Stephanie 46. Although their kids think they're 34 and 36, so they can't listen to this podcast.
Well, I was going to say, they're not going to do the math. Like, they're kids. Like,
Oh, it's so funny.
But
It's
you
so
did the
funny.
math for them, so.
I do the math for them. So the girl, however old the girls were at that point, I think they were like maybe 10 and 12 or 9 and 11. They were still, they were just going into the youth group. And Stephanie was just going into the youth group when we came here. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a bigger church. Everything was new. But I had learned, we had spent 10 years at East Park Baptist and with Reggie as pastor and I as the pastor's wife. And we had done a lot at East Park. It was a smaller church. And so we did a lot. Like I worked the nursery and children's church and sang in the choir, did the women's ministry, taught a ladies class, just did a lot. And so I remember when Reggie was being interviewed here by the pulpit committee, they had interviewed him 2 or 3 times, and then they asked me to come in. And I was so nervous about what I was going to say. And I felt so intimidated by all of these men in these suits. And there were some women in there, and they all looked so professional. And I felt like this young child who knew nothing. I really did. And I remember I was sitting in a chair in the middle, in a circle with them all around me, and I was in the middle. And one of them said, "What do you feel like your duties are going to be as the pastor's wife, should we choose to hire Reggie as our pastor?" And I said, "Well, I really feel like what God has called me to do is to pray for him and to make sure he has a hot supper every night and a clean shirt to wear." And they liked the answer, I guess. They hired him. So and then I didn't have to come in with all the expectations of, doing this and doing that. I could just be a mother to his children and a wife to him. And that is really what God had called me to do. And I'm so thankful for that. So the things I get to do at Heritage now, I get to do because God called me to do it. And because I feel that desire to do it, not because there's any compulsion, because the church has never put that pressure on me, and I'm so grateful for that. It's been a great ministry here at Heritage. Yes.
That's wonderful. And, I have always been of the mind, if you are doing something that the Lord hasn't called you to, you might be in the way.
That's exactly right.
Of someone who he did call.
Yes. I've been in that place before, so I know that. Yes.
So, as you have been here, I know you've been here for 33 years.
33 years.
So, that's 3 lifetimes, right?
It is, absolutely, yes.
And you've seen lots of pieces, good and bad.
Yes.
And I know that people are given some information about the church history in the new members classes.
Yes.
I have been here since 2000.
Okay.
So 25 years.
A long time.
Yes. We have known each other for a long time.
A very long time, Janelle.
And so we have walked through some difficulties at our church. And was it 2008?
Yes.
Was big, difficult time in our church where there was a split, and that is mentioned in our new members class. And what I want to ask you is, that was a lot of your life spent with people here at this church, learning and growing with them. How did that affect you? How did you come to Sunday school or come to church every Sunday and keep going?
Well, it was very difficult. I want to mention that at that point in time, our son Jonathan was not in church, and I had gone. I went to the deacons. We were not an elder led church at that point. We had deacons, but I did go to the staff and the deacons um, in a group setting and asked them, please, not not to bring my son into the conversation that was going on at the church, because I didn't want to do anything that would hinder his walk with Christ. I was fearful of that because Jonathan already had turned away, and I was just fearful of what that would do to him. And everybody involved was so respectful of that request and so good about that. They continued to love Jonathan, and they never brought the fact that Jonathan was not in church into the conversation. And Jonathan was an adult at that point. He just he wasn't coming. And I was really grateful for that. We had a daughter at that point. Stephanie was living in Virginia Beach, and Angela was local. She lived around here. Um, Reggie and I found out what was going on. We had been at church one Wednesday night, and that night after church, we went to Ridgecrest just for just a personal little retreat, the two of us, because things seemed to be getting heated at the church. There was just a lot of there seemed to be a lot of division. And Reggie got a call that night from a member here that really filling him in on what was going on. That there are a group of people that are about to leave, and just want to make you aware of that. And so he did get a heads up and was able to make some phone calls while we were there. And I was thankful we had that time away, because it gave us time to be a little detached and to pray and kind of prepare ourselves for what was going to happen. Um, and I think in the end, what the big controversy was what is a Sunday morning service for? Is it for the believer? Um, is it for Christ, or is it for the unbeliever? How are we going to gear our services? What do you believe about that? What do we believe about that? And we had Reggie really believes, and I believe, that Sunday morning is for the edification of the church, for the believer, and we come together and we worship God. And we had a group who really believed that it should be more evangelistic, that we should be looking out, be looking at unbelievers, and gear the service more toward a seeker-friendly church for people that are coming in looking for Jesus. And there was just a lot of there were books being written at the time. There was a lot of how do we see the sovereignty of God? How are we looking at God? And what do we believe Sunday morning should be? And it became a very heated discussion at times. It was some very lively business meetings and private meetings. And my husband felt very confident that God had called him to be here at Heritage.
It's interesting because since years past of that, I recognized things that I have read and podcasts I've listened to, things that I realized that were going on nationally in the Christian movement, how that affected Little Johnson City, Tennessee.
It absolutely did.
And how that other Christians were looking at and questioning what should we be doing? What is our role as Christians? Yes. And it's really interesting to see how we can get distracted from the gospel.
Yes.
That's not to say that the people that had a different view were distracted from the gospel. They had a different view of the gospel.
Yes.
And how that should be done in the church.
Right.
But it was very much a cultural thing that was going on in the nation. And it was helpful for me to recognize that, to realize it wasn't anything personal.
It felt personal,
It felt
but it was
very
not.
personal.
You're right. It felt personal because these people had become our family.
Yes.
I mean, these were this was our family. We had worshiped together. We'd raised our children together. We'd gone on retreats together, and now they were leaving. And we lost 3 staff members, and I mean, in the end, with families and all, probably 200 people left on one Sunday. It was devastating. It was devastating. My daughter that lived in Virginia Beach drove home to sit with us in church that Sunday morning because we didn't know what was going to happen. We know pastors who've been escorted out to their cars. We didn't know how this was going to shake out. We didn't know. Stephanie came home and sat with us. Angela came from the church she was attending and sat with us. Jonathan came to church that Sunday and sat with us. We sat in the row together and we all cried. We all cried because this was our family. And we watched these people leave, and it was hard. And I'll be honest with you, Janelle. At that point, I wanted to leave. It didn't feel like the heartache was. It was just so hard and so painful. I wanted to go, and I begged my husband to go. And we talked long, and we prayed long and hard about this, and we sought counsel. And we met with small groups of people from the church. We met in one of the basement rooms over in one of the buildings we used to have in the manse. We met 3 times a week for several weeks with small groups, just hashing out what is happening. What are we doing? What do you believe? Where do you stand? Where are we going to go from here? And I honestly, to be honest, I wanted to run away from it all because I'm not a fighter. At least I was not a fighter then. Um, I wanted to run from it, and Reggie felt strongly that the Lord had called him here and that he would be abandoning the flock if he left. And so we stayed. And it's probably the best decision we ever made, you know?
So when I was here and seeing those things, we had some connections, but with probably a small group of people within the church.
Yeah.
But still seeing those people that you respected greatly, and that you had been teaching their children, all of those things, seeing them go was very painful for me. Yet I didn't have the connections that you did, so I know the hurt. We walked through that hurt.
You did walk through it, and you had a lot of connections. You know how it hurts. It's
Yes.
like losing a family member.
Yes, and another person that was walking through that at the same time said it's divorce. I've been through divorce. It's divorce because we still see them.
Yes.
We still go to Walmart. We still go to the to the place to eat, and we see them, and we have to smile and be Jesus anyway, represent Him. And people in the community had questions, and it just kept getting more difficult, just like in a divorce. Like, who was at fault? Why did that happen? So that was helpful to me to realize you can hold your head up and you can keep walking.
I do want to give a big shout out to Mindy Young. Mindy,
Love Mindy.
Mindy is my sister, and she was my friend before all of this happened. She was my friend through this. She and her husband left. Her husband was on staff. They moved to Colorado. Mindy is still my friend, and I love her. She's my sister, and I love her. And she, even during some of those hard meetings, Mindy said, "I want to sit with you," and she's my sister, and some of those relationships have stood the test of time, and we've walked through fire together, and we still love each other. So I'm so grateful for that. So grateful. It's a family of God.
Yes.
We're the family of God.
That's right.
We're to spend eternity together, you know?
That's right. That's right. And when we love the Lord first, then we can love others.
That's right.
Even when things are hard.
Yes.
And I love that you brought that in, because that's one of the points of this podcast, is for us to see that everybody in our congregation have walked through some of the dirt.
Absolutely.
But we still love Jesus,
Yes.
and we can rally around each other and continue this community. I actually love now that our church is healthy, and the elder led is a blessing from the Lord. Those men who are serving our congregation and loving us and praying for us is such a blessing. It's also great for me to be able to compare our congregation now, um, and say to others, this is what healthy congregation looks like.
Yes.
This is what we are doing. This is how we love the Lord. And this is how we're making disciples here and around the world.
Absolutely.
And if you want to question some of the things about the church that you're going to, that's great.
Yes.
Ask the right questions. Not only are they teaching and preaching the gospel, are they living it out?
Yes.
And I can say our congregation at Pastor Reggie's lead is doing that.
I think so. I believe that. And I love the transparency I see in our people. Um, I don't see pretense. I don't see people trying to be something that they're not. I love that, because I think a part of it is because we have walked a long time down this road together. And Janelle, you've been here since 2000. You know all my dirt. I don't have things to hide. You know me, and I want to be known like that. I want our lives to be open like that. It's a good thing. It's we all want a little privacy, but I don't want secrets. I want my life is out there, and I want you to know me.
I love that. And I think we learned those hard lessons the hard
Yes,
way.
absolutely.
And we walked through those difficult days and with such fervent prayer. And I know my heart was, God, heal us.
Yes.
And to sit in this place and see where He has given us this transition and see people pouring into our church hungry for the gospel.
Absolutely.
And they say, I'm here because you are preaching the Bible.
Yes.
And this congregation loves the Lord.
They do.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Like, come on.
Yes.
And it just feels like just so many blessings from the Lord at this point to get to sit back and enjoy.
Absolutely.
When we had walked through the difficult things before.
Right.
And I, like you, said it would be so much easier to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And you see people out and they say, you still go to that church?
Yes.
And, my husband, like Pastor Reggie said, I just don't think the Lord is opening the door for us to do anything different.
Right. And you had a lot of friends go.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And had lots of invitations.
I'm sure you did. Yes.
And we just said, we're here to follow the Lord's guidance, and we just can't.
Yes.
Like, it would be wrong. I'm not saying you are wrong for leaving, but for us, the Lord has not given us the green light.
Yes.
And we're praying about that. We're asking Him about that a lot.
Sure.
And so
Yes.
we just try to be faithful,
Absolutely.
even if it's difficult.
And I'll tell you, that was in 2008. Both of my girls were expecting their first babies at that point. They had their babies 5 weeks apart. And the church, all the church, we were all together, gave them both a baby shower. And I remember everybody was there. And a group of women gave both the girls high chairs for their babies. They're beautiful little wooden high chairs. Well, Stephanie ended up, my oldest, had 7 children. And she still has that high chair sitting by the table. It's old now. It was 2008. This is 25. It's old now, but it's beautiful. And she's not aware of it. But every time I look at that high chair, I think about heritage, and and that big family, that the big family before this, before all that happened. And it's precious to me. It's the family of God. It's precious to me. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, we walked through that, and we have, how many years later is it? And, I feel like I looked around at the church on Sunday, and we're pushing the walls out with people again. So I'm thankful for what God is doing. I'm so
I think
grateful.
we had to walk through the difficult things to recognize what the great part is as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I'm enjoying community in our church.
Me too. Me too.
It's great. And I'm hopeful that this podcast pushes that forward as well.
Absolutely. Me too. Me too.
So you and Pastor have been married for how long now?
49 years.
49 years.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes.
amazing. So during that, let's touch a little bit back on your kids.
Yes.
So your girls both had loved the Lord for a long time and stayed firm, even despite the bad examples maybe that they were given. But it did affect Jonathan.
It did affect Jonathan, and Jonathan had a lot of bitterness in his heart toward the church. He was hurt. I can't blame everything on what happened, because Jonathan, just like me, Jonathan had a rebellious heart, just like my heart. And Jonathan got involved with, he started drinking. He moved to Asheville, and his life just kind of fell apart. He was away from home. He was away from the church. And he had some great friends, but he was in a completely different, it was a different group of friends, a different scene. And he came home in 2018 and asked if he could just move back home with us. He was not in a good place. And he did. He lived with us for 3 years. And we didn't realize until the last few months of his life that Jonathan was an alcoholic. And not just an alcoholic, but very sick alcoholic. And he just was not able to function on his own anymore. And he lived with us, and it was difficult, but it was sweet, because Jonathan loved us, and he demonstrated that so much. I would come in. I was doing home hospice during those last few months or last 3 years that he was at home. And I would come home from work in the evenings, and Jonathan would take my shoes off of me. Every day he'd take my shoes off of me, and just so kind. And he loved his dad, loved his nieces and nephews, and his sisters. And as you know, things progressively got worse with him. His liver began to fail, and he had a couple of hospitalizations, and he eventually died on February 10th in 2022. He spent almost 2 weeks in the hospital before, and on the way in to the hospital the last time, John knew he wasn't doing well. And on the way to the hospital, he said, "Mom, I'm going to tell you this, and I don't want to have to say it again." He said, "But when I die, if I die," he said, "I want to be cremated." He said, "And I want some of the ashes to go to each one of the girls." He called them Hope and Renee, his two sisters, Stephanie Renee and Angela Hope. He said, "I want Hope and Renee to have some of my ashes, and I want you and Dad to have the rest. But I want you to take some of my ashes to Northern Ireland, where Dad loves," which Reggie loves Northern Ireland, the home of C.S. Lewis. And he said, "I want you to scatter them there." And he said, "And I don't want to talk about that anymore." And we got to the ER, and he told the nurse, he said, "I'm a raging alcoholic." He'd never said those words before. And we got into the hospital, and he had so much shame And he was so sorry, and there was nothing he could do to go back and fix it. And it was sad. It was sad, just very sad. And we let old friends that he had separated from and hadn't seen in 3 years, we let his old friends come in and see him, and new friends come in and see him because he had been so isolated. And people got to say their goodbyes to him and tell him they loved him. And he, the last day before the day that he was actually intubated, we were in the room with Jonathan, just me and Stephanie and Angela, Reggie, and John. They had put him in ICU, and the girls had taken markers and written on the glass walls of the ICU scripture verses, and they were playing music, Christian music. And he was in there, and he was overwhelmed. And he said, Stephanie called her Renee, would you pray? And Stephanie prayed with him and prayed with all of us. And it was just heart crushing. And then he looked over to Angela and he said, Hope, would you pray? And she prayed. She prayed heaven down. And then the room got quiet. And I said, Jonathan, do you want to pray? And he just began to pour his heart out to God. God, I am sorry for everything I've done. I've been hiding from you all my life. And wherever I hide from you, Lord, you always find me. And he prayed this prayer that was a gift to us because he was intubated that night and was never able to speak again. And so we were able to conclude that precious life with such hope because he had given us that hope. That was a gift from God to us. It was a gift. And so we have walked these past 3 years with great hope, knowing we are seen by the church, we are seen by God, and we can see God. The church has been a gift to us. I know the elders came up and prayed with John and for John, and people came up and prayed with him and for him. And then after he died, the church surrounded us with so much love. And this church has walked with us through the joys and the sorrows of our lives. And, we're getting older. We're 67 and 68, and they continue to walk right with us. And it's just been a journey that nobody should ever have to miss out on in their lives, to have the church walk beside you, to know the Lord is with you.
Amen. And that we can see his love from other people.
Absolutely.
That have his spirit within them.
Absolutely, yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Teana, for sharing your heart and your experience and the good and the bad and the difficult with Heritage Baptist.
Thank you, Janelle. Thank you. I didn't know if I could talk this long, and now I feel like I haven't even scraped the end of the tip of the iceberg.
I feel like we need episode 2. I had so many other things I wanted to talk to you about as well, and we've run out of time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been a blessing to me. I know you've been a blessing to others.